Will, thank you so much for taking this time this Monday morning. Thank you so much for being here today. And Will Smothers what is your title? Can you give me that?
I am the Edafio Cloud Team Leader.
Today you get to be recognized for the month Associate Spotlight of the Month for March. And just want to say on behalf of Edafio and myself, what a wonderful privilege it is to work with somebody who's got such knowledge in this space, because you make it much more tangible and attainable for those of us that don't really understand the benefits of what cloud offers and what you share. And it's really wonderful. So
Well, I
thank you for
appreciate
all that you do.
I absolutely appreciate having the opportunity to do this, and having done this for as long as I have, I learned a long time ago that not everybody necessarily understands the IT jargon, and it's important for us to be able to speak in their terms and help them understand complex issues. And so that's a skill I worked on for a number of years, and really have honed that in my previous profession when I worked with a lot of manual labor folks and needed them to really understand what we were trying to get them to do and why it was important. That's a skill that I'm glad I can bring to the table and help our associates and our customers try to understand some of these more complex concepts. So I do take some pride in that, and I appreciate you pointing that out.
Yes. So on that note, can you give us a little background on who Will Smothers is and how long you've worked for us, as well as just what your job entails?
Sure. I could jokingly bring up, the line from The Jerk about, I was born in, but I'm not going to do that. I've been in IT for close to 30 years now. Make myself feel old, age myself. I ended up going feet first into the IT world with the U.S. military. I have a degree in journalism, so I was assigned to the public affairs unit after spending some time in the combat arms. And at the time, because I was young and I know how to use a computer, our chief of information or our chief of public affairs said, "Hey, why don't you run what they called their web cell?" That really was an IT department. We ran Exchange, we ran Active Directory, we were responsible for updating all the workstations, we did their website, we did all these kind of things. When I graduated to the civilian world, right? Grew up and got to come back into the civilian world. I had a number of friends who worked for Axiom Corporation in Conway. At that time, it was no longer a fledgling company. It was kind of a full-blown data processing company who had also branched out into running other people's IT infrastructure. Mm-hmm. And a very good friend of mine came to me and said, "Hey, I have this crazy idea that I want to try at Axiom. Instead of making our customers buy hardware, I want Axiom to buy the hardware, and we're just going to charge them a monthly fee for running their stuff on our hardware." It was called Shared Services Division at that point in time. Brent Hobby and myself started that. That grew dramatically from there. We did firewalls and security for Axiom and our customers. We ran infrastructure for our customers. And after doing that for a couple of years and building a team and bringing them in, I was asked to move to the Axiom's internal IT team. And I was very fortunate to work with some really great engineers on that team. We had offices and employees in 7 different countries. So we spanned 24 hours. We ran the full infrastructure for Axiom. We ran their Active Directory, their Exchange, file and print, antivirus. You name it, we did it. And then I got the opportunity to move into an architect role where I was able to help design and implement solutions from soup to nuts. There's only a handful of the architects at Axiom, or were at the time. So I was very fortunate to have been recognized by my peers and allowed to move into that role. And so I was able to help design some pretty big solutions for some fairly large customers in the Fortune 100 space. So got to learn a lot of really good experience there. Where I really started to understand how to lead people was when I left Axiom and went to work for a construction company in Central Arkansas named Napholtz. And I went to work for them thinking, oh, this is just a little local mom and pop construction company. Got there. It was an interesting way. A friend of mine had sent me an email and said, "Hey, I have a friend of mine who's looking for somebody in IT who can do these things." And as I read through the email, I was like, wow, that's me and that's me. And that's me. And I had no sooner sent an email to the original poster of the email.
Mhm.
Then my buddy emailed me back and said, "Oh, and by the way, you can't apply for this." Well, it was already too late at that point in time. So John Napholtz and I met for breakfast one morning at 7 in the morning. We were supposed to be done by 8. We didn't finish talking until 10:30. He and I were kindred souls.
Yeah.
And he was just fantastic. John is the youngest of a number of brothers and sisters in the Napholtz family, and all his brothers had already retired by the time they were 55, 56. And so John wanted to do that as well, but he wanted to find someone who he felt comfortable leaving his baby, his IT baby, with, because he had run the IT department and created it at Napholtz in the 90s, and so it was his baby. He really, he really didn't want to just turn it over to anyone. So spent a couple of years working, and the first thing I did when I walked in there is I came to a really large realization. The two realizations I came to pretty quickly is Napholtz was a lot bigger than I expected.
Mhm.
They had 1,100 employees. They were in 7 states, offices in 7 states. They worked in 48 of the states, actually 47 at the time. And at the time, they were a $650 million revenue company. And that just blew me away because they were personified as such a local entity. And so I really learned from the leadership cast at Nabholz that it's all about the people that work for you and how to make them feel like this is their company, which is why Nabholz felt like such a small company, is because they really embraced their employees and invested in their employees. The second thing I realized very quickly was that what they were doing was not scalable. So I had a pretty frank discussion with John and the board of directors and said, we've got to move in a different direction. We have to move to a more nimble solution because our job sites are coming up every 12 to 18 months and going back down and moving, and our current way of doing things is not scalable. Additionally, if anything were to happen to the main facility in Conway, we would not have been able to be sustainable. So it was at that point in time we made the decision that we were going to move cloud-based, and that was the beginning of our cloud journey. When I got there, we had 140 servers. When I left, we had no servers. We had firewalls, routers, and switches, and that was it. Everything else was either software as a service running in 365 and SharePoint, and of course some construction specific software as a service packages like BIM 360 and PlanGrid and things of that nature. Or if we had a more traditional piece of software, such as the accounting package that Nabholz had been on for 25 years, we moved it into Azure and ran it virtually. So we literally had nothing left on-prem. It allowed our workforce to become extremely mobile. It allowed us to, we moved a lot of our processes into automated solutions inside of SharePoint and built workflows around those and did a lot of development of moving data between SharePoint and our other software as a service packages so that we could, when we set up a new project, it would build a project repository in SharePoint, but it would also build one in BIM 360, and it would add it into our accounting system and all these things that traditionally had been an individual's job to do in the back end. So we had really modernized how Nabholz was doing things and really brought them into the 21st century in a fairly short amount of time. I ended up leaving Nabholz in I believe it was 2017, mainly because John had already retired. The old board of directors and the executive suite had all had a turnover, and the new regime that was coming in really did not have an understanding of how IT had helped transform Nabholz, didn't really see its value. And part of that was we made IT simple, right? We made it something they didn't have to think about. It just worked all the time. There wasn't an issue. So they didn't seem to understand that, hey, we were helping solve business problems. So I was feeling a little frustrated at that time. I reached out to an old buddy of mine, Kenny Kinley's, and said, "Hey, I'm kind of frustrated here. I really kind of, I've got this skill set of both technical and I know how to help lead and make good business decisions and help decide. And I really want to help some other company understand how they can utilize IT to fix their business problems." And Kenny said, "It's funny. I happen to work for a company that does that." And so Kenny and I got to talking, and along with Amy and Keith Woodruff, and initially they suggested that I come in and be what we called at the time a virtual CIO. They're now our CELs, our client engagement leaders, and said, "Hey, why don't you come be one of the first ones of those for us?" So I said, "Oh, okay, I'll come. This sounds pretty good." I did some research into Edafio. I asked around because IT in Arkansas is a pretty small community. There were a number of people who worked for Edafio that I had known in my days at Axiom, who I had a pretty good respect for, and so it seemed like a pretty good fit for me. So I moved down there, and the minute I walked in the door and kind of discussions with some of the folks around, what we had done at Nabholz, Kenny and Keith said, "Hey, we're kind of floundering with our 365, and we want to move our Edafio cloud a little further. Neil had done a great job setting it up, and we had onboarded a number of customers to it, but we'd kind of like to take that next level. Can you take that on for us? And you do that for us, and we'll hold off on doing the VCIO for now." And absolutely sure. So I jumped into that with both feet. The first thing I did is the Edafio cloud had been covered in this kind of a veil of secrecy, right? Hey, this is how we just put customers in it, just magically works. Well, one of the first things we did is, having been in IT so long, I understood that geeks, like the rest of it, like everybody at Edafio is, really want to understand how things work. So we ripped back that veil and said, hey, this is how it's set up. We started transforming it and changing it, and getting it into the state it's today. So we started putting in a lot of high availability pieces. As of right now, the Edafio cloud is completely redundant internally. So there is no single point of failure inside of it. We're currently running at about a 99.997% uptime rate, which is pretty great. But there's still room for improvement, as the numbers show. Right? We're continuing to evolve that, and we're looking at kind of, hey, what's our next step in the Edafio cloud process? What do we want to do? And so we're starting to look at disaster recovery. We also really took a hard look at 365, and what we saw is that, hey, we're using a lot of on-premise solutions. We're not really embracing software as a service very much yet, and so we started working with a number of the senior and primary engineers to start identifying some customers who would just made sense to move them into it, right? Folks who didn't really have anything else other than maybe Exchange and file servers, and hey, we could really leverage Exchange Online and SharePoint to do that. And so we started moving some of our customers to that. And then along came a customer called Harvest Group. And Harvest Group was great. They are a young bunch of individuals. They are all in on cloud, 100%. So they really helped us showcase what cloud could do. And Austin Bailey was an absolutely fantastic engineer to put with them, because he's very hungry. He is very good at learning and utilizing cloud. So he has done an excellent job helping push that forward. And in the meantime, we've grown the Edafio cloud team and grown the skill sets of our individuals. So, we have Shane Moore, who's doing our Edafio cloud proper, who's, everybody knows, VMware, vExpert. He's been doing this a long time. He's really got us running in a really good state inside of the Edafio cloud. We have Jason Snoddy, who we grew out of the help desk, moved him into cloud. He has been fantastic. He is, dual Microsoft Cloud certified for both security and for cloud operations. And then we were able to help recruit Chris Schwilling to come to our team, and Chris has done the same thing that Jason did, right? So both of them are cloud certified by Microsoft. Both of them are running massive projects, and they're pretty much what they do day to day now is nothing but projects to onboard our existing customers and new customers into 365, and we have a pretty full palette, which is great. It speaks to it. Now, just like Edafio Cloud, there's always room for improvement. So we're continuing to look at what's coming down the line. What do we need to grow the Microsoft business at Edafio? How do we get more and more ingrained with that? So we're really digging in and starting to really try to understand the Microsoft partnership for more than just being able to say, hey, we're a Microsoft Silver partner, right? We really need to understand, and we're really working into understanding how to leverage the benefits that come with being that Microsoft partner. We're digging into that. We're getting there, and I'm never happy with where we are. I will always want us to improve. So that's kind of long and short of where I started and where I am now.
So what do you like most about your job?
Oh, I think at heart I'm an educator. I love teaching people mainly because I love learning. I love teaching people new things they don't know. So for me, every day it is helping other engineers and helping our customers understand the benefits of not just cloud, right? But IT in general. Why is it important? In my previous career, one of my favorite things that I used to always hear from old construction superintendents was, why do we even need computers? And I said, okay, tell me this. If you were to lose your computer today, what would you be able to get done? And he said, well, we'd still do everything we're doing. I said, really? How would you do that? Because you have to have daily reports that we do through workflow. You have to be able to get the diagrams and schematics that we do electronically now. There is no more paper. You have to have contracts signed that we sign through Adobe Sign. There's no more paper. So how exactly would you do your job without a computer? And I'd always get a pause from that guy, and he'd go, you know what? I guess you're right. I guess we can't. That's kind of what I really like helping people understand, is that they need to quit seeing IT as a necessary evil and need to understand that IT can really truly help solve business problems. I'm a big advocate of making good business decisions based on data, right? So you've never heard anybody say, man, all that data we had just led us to an absolutely terrible decision. You've never heard that. You always hear, man, that data really helped shine a spotlight on a problem we had, right? Again, that's IT helping business solve a problem. So that's really where I want to get our customers and our engineers to, is to that point where we're not fighting forest fires every day, right? We're
Right.
proactive, we're already monitoring, we're already watching, and we're helping customers solve those IT problems that their business, solving their business problems by using IT to do that. So I really love educating people doing that. I think that's probably the favorite part of my job every single day, is just knowing that I'm going to get to help people understand how that stuff works.
Right. And that it's not threatening them, but it's here to actually
No,
fit, and
yeah,
it's
yeah.
there for their
Well,
greater
and
good.
and one of my favorite things, Melissa, is when I first started moving to cloud, both at Axiom and at Nabholz, and then I saw it initially at Edafio, and now it's kind of done a 180-degree turn, is engineers always heard cloud and went, oh, my job's going away. And
Yeah.
I always tell them that, no, your job's not going away. Your job's changing, right? So instead of you having to go, man, that hard drive failed, I got to go fix that. Hey, guess what? That goes away. And now you can actually focus on what you wanted to do in IT, which is, hey, figure out how to solve a business problem and do what you need to do, right? Yeah, that's one
Change
of
is
my favorite
hard.
things to get folks to understand.
Yeah. When they don't understand, then they're scared and they become resistant to it. But when
That's
you unveiled and saw what was underneath, where people could actually understand that this
sure.
is here to benefit and they can
Yes.
grow from
Yeah,
it.
that's my
And
goal, right?
now
Is
maybe most
it's
people are
easy.
not so resistant to going
Yeah.
to the cloud, where before it was everything needs to be on-prem.
There's always pieces that could potentially stay on-prem, but the argument I always make is, why do you want to have the nightmare and headache of running a data center, right?
Mhm.
Why do you want to have to worry about redundant power? Why do you want to worry about high vac? Why do you want it blah blah blah? Let us worry about that, right? Let us deal with that. Either put it in the Edafio cloud and let us deal with it, or let's put it into software as a service or a public cloud or whatever the case may be, so that you can quit focusing on that and focus on what you're good at, right? So if you're a doctor, you're not good at running computers. You're good at helping treat people who are sick. Let us take the nightmare of the IT away and make it easy for you so you can concentrate on what you do, right? Your core competency is, and let us deal with our core competency, which is IT.
Well, and I think that so many industries and business leaders, decision makers, as like you mentioned, healthcare, they need someone that they can ask the questions. And so just knowing that you are here, Will, to say, for those that don't know what they don't know, you can go in and go, okay, you're struggling. You don't understand how this might benefit. So let me
Yeah,
just break it down to you. And
yeah,
then you go do you, and you trust that we will make sure that you can do your
that's right.
job efficiently. I don't
That's right.
think that a lot of people know who to go to.
Yeah,
So that's what we're here to try to do, is say, Maybe Will can perhaps share a little insight to
Yeah,
teach
I
you before
completely
you
agree with
speak.
that. And we have a customer, or had a customer, who, my favorite thing that he tells me, he and I have become friends since this initial meeting, like on a personal level. And he said to me the other day, when we were struggling with 365 licensing, we talked to 4 different vendors over 18 months and nobody gave me a straight answer. He said, you walked in, we had a 2-hour conversation, and I came out of that meeting knowing exactly what I needed to do.
You put
And
people at ease. You do.
yeah,
You do.
right.
You're like, let me just. You're not here to try to
Mm-mm.
deceive or not even be deceived. Just you just are very clear.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's my goal, right? So I learned a long time ago, it is better to be honest and straightforward, even if it's bad news,
Yeah.
than it is to sugarcoat it or dance around the problem, or whatever the case may be. So yeah, I am 100% about being clear and direct with the customer and with other engineers, that they really need to understand the problem, or they need to understand the solution, one of the
Yeah.
two. And if you don't give them that full information, they can't do that, right? They can't make good decisions.
If you could give me the best career lesson that you've learned thus far, and how many years have you been?
Yeah,
There's
too
probably
many.
a lot of lessons you can share with me, but maybe one that really sets the tone and people could appreciate.
I think the biggest lesson I have learned, and again, it goes back to the being an educator and a learner at heart, is never stop learning, whatever it is you're doing, right? For me, it's IT. I am fortunate enough to have a very supportive family, who knows that I am truly a geek at heart, and give me that opportunity to, while they're doing other things like reading a magazine or watching some show I have no interest in, that it's okay for me to just sit on the sofa and read what I'm interested in. And I'm interested in IT. I am continually trying to learn, and I always tell people, you don't need to be on the cutting edge, but you should be on the bleeding edge, right? Let somebody else figure out the big hurdles, but then you need to be right on their heels so that you're not behind. Well, and the only way you can do that is to stay educated. I saw a number of my, what I considered mentors at Axiom, who were in their mid 50s when I was in my 20s, and all of them were let go from Axiom. And it wasn't because they weren't good at their job, it was because they quit learning. They were happy with where they were. They didn't really understand that technology changed at the pace it did. So they learned something and got really good at it and then just stopped. Well, over time, that technology went away. I learned at a very young age, by watching others, to never be satisfied with where I was, to always be trying to learn and trying to move ahead and not moving back. I think that's the biggest lesson that I've learned, that I would tell young engineers is, don't ever quit learning. You've got to keep learning to keep moving ahead.
Are there any publications or podcasts or anything that you might recommend to those that are in this field that you enjoy?
I am a voracious reader of IT. And so there are, depending on what you're interested in, there are a laundry list of things. But what I've actually found to be a very good, and this is going to sound really odd, a very good, useful tool is actually LinkedIn. I got
Yeah.
off of social media almost 2 years ago, and the only thing that I stay on is LinkedIn. And there are continually great articles, great publications, podcasts, that are touted by people that I respect, look up to, that end up leading me down rabbit holes continually, right? So I'll start on one thing, I'll listen to this podcast, or I'll read this article that they've published, and I'm like, that's interesting. Let me go figure that out, and it'll start me down a rabbit hole. So I don't necessarily have a long laundry list of, hey,
Yeah.
you need to go read this IT publication, or you need to go listen to this podcast. I think you just have to continually listen to everything that's out there. But I really do like LinkedIn, because it brings, especially if you have a good group of people that you respect and trust that are in your network, you're going to continually be having new information brought to. I find myself,
Yeah, that you can learn
oh
from
yeah,
others that are within your industry that are
yeah,
constantly sharing. Yeah, that
yeah,
makes complete sense. And you don't have to, you can clear out the weeds.
yeah. Yeah,
that other
exactly.
social media platforms tend to bring in.
And I will say that I don't want to be that old guy, right? But I will say that getting rid of social media was one of the best things that I've done in my lifetime, because it has cleared out all of the lint that used to distract me, and
Yeah.
the ugliness of people. I don't have to worry about that anymore. I move on and keep myself pretty happy at this point.
As I say, water what waters you.
That's that's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Yeah,
So
take everything else away. What is your personal mantra? Do you have one?
I have a couple that I really live by. I learned in the military a long time ago that you have to lead by example. You have to lead from the front, right? So I never ask anybody to do anything that I have not done or I would not do. You don't tell your guys to jump out of a plane if you haven't done it, right? You
Right.
don't tell your guys to charge if you're not doing it. So I learned a long time ago that you need to be leading from the front. If you're leading from the rear, you're not really leading, right? You're following somebody else. I'm a big advocate of lead from the front and don't ask anybody to do anything you wouldn't do. The other one that I learned in basic training of all places, and it has stuck with me to this day. I had a drill instructor tell me it's okay to say I don't know, but immediately say, but I'll find out. And the story that I tell about this is I was a combat engineer originally, and so we were building a bridge, and I was having trouble with something, and I yelled at my drill instructor, and so I yelled at him. I asked my drill instructor, and said, "Hey, I'm sorry to ask this question. I really don't understand how to do this." And he stopped the entire platoon from working, called everybody over, and told us two things. The first one was, don't be afraid to ask a question, because if you're thinking it, everybody else is thinking it. Be courageous enough to ask that question. That was that stuck with me as well. It's not necessarily one of my mantras, but that. And then the other one was the one about it's okay to say I don't know. I don't know how to do this, but you need to follow up with, but I'm going to find out, right? And then do it, right? Don't just say it and don't go do it. Go find out and then come back and tell them. So I live by that one pretty staunchly. I really believe it's okay to say you don't know, right? But I do think you need to educate yourself on what it is and how to do it, and then go tell that person. So those are two of the three. The third one, I think that it was a hard lesson for me to learn, and I learned it when I was at Nabholz, but I truly believe it, and I really tell people this all the time. I'm not smarter than anybody else, and neither are you. You just have a different skill set. The guys out in the field at Nabholz are a great example. They're not good with computers. They don't need to be good at computers. They need to be good with what they do. And I used to have guys who would come in out of college working for me, and I would hear them talking to these guys in the field, and they'd be talking down to them. And I would have to go in and say, hey, look, you're not smarter than they are. You were just talking to a master carpenter. That guy does trigonometry in his head every single day. Can you do trig in your head? Well, no. Exactly. You're not smarter than them. You just have a different skill set. You need to figure out how to communicate on their level with them, because you're not smart. So
Bravo.
those are kind of the three things that I live by, right? It's okay to say I don't know, but follow up and find out the answer to that. Lead from the front, and you're not smarter than anybody else. You just have a different skill set. So those are the three things.
So that leads me to, if I could ask you, or anybody that knows you, what 3 words best describe you, what would they be? I would say leader, first of all.
Um, I hope that it would be honest, loyal, and trustworthy, right? Those are the three things that I would hope people would say about me. Now, that's my hope. I'm sure much worse things have been said about me in the past, which is perfectly normal and fine, right? You can't, if you're honest and you're frank, and you're not always going to make friends, right? Because sometimes you have to tell people things that they don't want to hear. But I think in the long run, when they come to the realization that you were telling them something that was best for them, I think it pays off in untold dividends. So, but yeah, absolutely, I think those are the 3 words that I hope come to mind when people think of me.
We're almost coming to the end of our call,
Mm-hmm.
and you really did already answer the question about why you came to Edafio. So we will not end with that one, but Who or what made you smile today? Or even maybe this week, since it is Monday.
I have been very fortunate to get to work with this individual on a customer, and so I've become very close with this individual. And every time I work with him, I can't help but he has this enthusiastic lust for knowledge that is just intoxicating. And that's Eric Roddy. He is just like a sponge. He just wants to absorb everything that you want to give him. And he has this rare ability that very few engineers have, which is he's able to talk to anybody on any level and get them to understand something complex. And he is just an absolute joy to work with. I really enjoy working with Eric every time I get a chance to, and I really hope he continues to grow into the engineer that I know he has the capability to become. He's really a joy to work with.
That's great to hear. I actually got to have lunch with him recently when some of the Little Rock team came to Northwest Arkansas. And I sense that he does have this enthusiasm, and it's in his mannerisms, it's in his actions, and how when he speaks, just about anything. He's very animated.
Powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can feel it when you're around him. It's great. So.
Well, yeah, we could all use some of that. There is one thing I want to ask, like for anybody that's coming into maybe re-careering or that is looking to go into the field of IT, young or old. You mentioned never stop learning. Is there anything else that you might share in terms of, since this field is ever evolving and growing and we are constantly looking for new people, what would you share with them?
I think there's a misconception that IT is a gold mine. IT is not a gold mine, right? IT is it is a labor of love. I entered this industry when it was not unusual to work 60 and 70 hours a week. IT has this really different work schedule than pretty much any other industry, in that we have to work the normal business hours to work with the customer when they're having problems, but to add capacity to help fix some issues, things of that nature, you can't do that during normal business hours. So that has to be done after hours. So I think I would tell anyone who's looking to re-career, or anyone who is looking to come into IT, it's not a gold mine. There are a lot of hours involved in it, but if you do it right and you get with a good company, it is extremely satisfying, because you can see the tangible changes that you are helping a company make in a day-to-day way. So that to me is really the golden ring at the end, is being able to see those changes that you're helping enact for that company.
Oh, that's great. That insatiable desire to continually learn, like you mentioned, never stop learning. That's innate in anybody who's going into IT, where you've got there's a puzzle that you're solving, and it's constantly changing.
Oh yeah, and always evolving, right? So.
Yeah. Well, Will, it's been wonderful for you to share all that you have, and I don't think that there's much that I even need to edit, to be quite frank. I'm just going to put it out there because I hope that everybody watches and listens to what you have to share.
And thank you for doing this, Melissa. I appreciate it.
Well, it's always a pleasure to get to know a little bit more about our employees. I think it brings more community and connection, which is what we all want, and what you're providing with Ukraine and supporting this also as a great opportunity to bring us closer together in ways that have profound ripples that we won't even know, but every bit matters. Hey, thank you so much for your time. And again, congratulations on your March Associate Spotlight. It's been such
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Have a great rest of your day.
Talk to you soon. All right, bye.